Hello, everyone. I'm pleased today to have with me Dr. Andrew D. Huberman. He's a neuroscientist and tenured associate professor in the Department of Neurobiology at the Stanford University School of Medicine. Dr. Huberman and his lab have made contributions to the brain development, brain plasticity, and neural regeneration and repair fields. His work and his lab's work focuses on the visual system, elucidating the nature of neural mechanisms controlling light-mediated activation of the circadian and autonomic arousal centers in the brain and mediating conscious vision or sight. His lab investigates how the brain works, how it changes through experience, it's a field known as plasticity, and how it repairs itself. He and his colleagues have worked to discover strategies for halting and reversing vision loss in blinding diseases and understanding how visual perceptions and autonomic arousal states are integrated to impact behavioral responses. His lab employs a large range of state-of-the-art investigative tools: virtual reality, gene therapy, anatomy, electrophysiology, and imaging and behavioral analysis. In January 2021, Dr. Huberman launched Huberman Lab podcast concentrating on neuroscience and other scientific topics. It's done phenomenally well for a detailed scientific podcast, attracting 1.5 million subscribers. It's very good to see you today, Dr. Huberman, and thank you for agreeing to talk with me.
Oh, delighted to be here. Your first book, 12 Rules for Life, sits prominently on our bookshelf in our living room, and we've all read it and learned a tremendous amount from you over the years, and certainly feel a kinship because of the shared relationship between university professorship and public education as well.
Right. Yeah, well, we've got lots in common. I'm particularly interested in the neurological work that you've done on both anxiety and exploration, although there's plenty of topics to talk about today and plenty of overlapping interests. But it's been a while since I've reviewed the neuroscience literature pertaining to both anxiety and exploration. And so maybe we could start by you laying out what you've discovered and how you're thinking about what you think anxiety signifies, how it's related to exploratory behavior, which I think you described as something approximating courageous approach, although you were talking about mice in that particular paper, and what you're thinking about with regards to the neural basis of these different behavioral responses, behavioral and emotional.
Sure, I'd be happy to. And I should mention that these days my laboratory mainly focuses on humans. We still do some mouse work, but we in partnership with people in psychiatry, we're doing essentially equivalent experiments in humans. So I'd be happy to elaborate there. You know, many people perhaps, but not everyone, have heard of the autonomic nervous system, which simply means automatic. It's a bit of a misnomer because without going too much into the history of that, if you look back to the origins of medicine in the time of Galen and so forth, when they were first, dissecting cadavers and whatnot, there was this idea of a nervous system, or a portion of the nervous system eventually came to be, that could control so-called vegetative functions, meaning the rate of digestion and the really what neuroscientists typically think of as boring stuff. But it's anything but boring. It's the stuff that keeps you from urinating while you're asleep, unless you're a very young child, right? And it's the stuff that keeps your digestion going as you command your attention to others. The autonomic nervous...
Right. It's all the things that are too complex for us to think through.
That's right. And they are, as you point out, immensely complex. And, nowadays with all this interest in the gut microbiome and things of that sort, these are tremendously complicated operations that are happening generally below our conscious and that are indeed vegetative. They can be controlled by emotion. We were all familiar with the idea that when we are emotionally distraught, that our digestion can be different, or et cetera. But typically, we can't control, for instance, in a conscious way, the rate of our digestion or the speed of our heartbeat in any kind of direct way. We can have a particular pattern of thought to control those. But in general, those functions were thought to be vegetative and outside of our conscious control. And the name autonomic nervous system sort of swallowed and overtook the vegetative part. So it includes that, but also three main aspects of body to brain signaling. And those three aspects are heart rate, could be quickening or slowing of heart rate. We are and we can be very aware of that, some of us more than others. Gut, and especially the chemical composition and the extent to which our gut is empty or full. So heart, stomach, and then rate of breathing and sort of depth of breathing, meaning how much air we have available to us. And I think the three main ways to think about the way that the brain and body communicate is that it's either going to be mechanical or chemical. Let's use the gut as an example. Your stomach can feel acidic, or it can feel nice and warm and fuzzy, whatever that is in a chemical sense. Your heart rate can feel like it's going at a rate that's appropriate for your circumstances. If you're running, it could be quick. And if you're sitting in a chair quietly at the doctor's office waiting to be called back there, and all of a sudden your heart starts racing, then you would think, well, that's appropriate for that situation, but it's uncomfortable, right? It's out of sync with what you are doing, which is sitting. So there's mechanical information, and then there's chemical information. And with respect to your lungs, you can feel like you're out of air or you have plenty of air. You can feel like your breathing is labored or it's easy, or in the chemical sense that the air that you're breathing, your lungs are burning, or it feels easy to breathe. So basically there's chemical and mechanical signaling from the body to the brain, and the brain interprets all of that. And we put all of that under the umbrella of the so-called autonomic nervous system. And the autonomic nervous system can really be best thought of along a continuum. And here I'll avoid complicated nomenclature, but I'll throw it out there for the aficionados. Some people have probably heard of the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. That naming is a little bit misleading. Again, what we can really think about the autonomic nervous system as is a continuum, or more like a seesaw, of at one end is alertness, and at the other end is calmness. Right? That is translated to the so-called sympathetic and parasympathetic nervous system, but I'll call it the alertness and calmness system just for sake of simplicity.